logistically and financially. She has given me every resource I need to successfully conclude and bring to justice in this case. I want to thank Chris Marticello, who is Assistant Superintendent of Docks. He has answered every question. He has done every request we have made of him. The state police have been outstanding in their investigative work, as they have been throughout my 45-year career as a prosecutor. I want to thank my longtime friends and my local colleagues, the County Executive, Tony Pacenti. He has been a great, great host to me and my staff. It's made us feel very, very welcome. And of course, I want to thank my colleague and my new friend, Todd Carville, for his assistance, the Oneida County District Attorney. I want to thank my team, who I just introduced. I want to give a special thanks to 23 members of this community who selflessly gave of their time and cautiously and very, very deliberatively went over this case and returned this indictment. I want to thank Robert Brooks, Jr. I don't know him very well. This is the second time I have met him. He strikes me as an extraordinary young man, and he has been very, very gracious and supportive of me and my team. I want to also thank Jared Brooks, who was Robert's brother, Robert Brooks, the deceased's brother, and also Robert Ricks, who was Robert's father. I remind everyone that all of these defendants are cloaked with the presumption of innocence, and they will get their day in court at some time in the very, very near future. I want to turn the microphone over to a couple of people. I'm going to start right now with New York State Police Superintendent Stephen James. Sue?
Good afternoon. Thank you, District Attorney Fitzpatrick and your staff. As the DA mentioned, essentially his office, through the special counsel responsibilities, assumed special counsel investigation of this case. And they immediately went to work. They worked closely with the members of the state police to put this case together. And certainly, as he said, it's not done, but I thoroughly appreciate the work and the professionalism that they put forward. I want to acknowledge the assistance that we received that was provided by the Onondaga County Medical Examiner's Office as well. So the state police, they were notified of Robert Brooks' death in the early morning of December 10th. Our investigation started immediately, led by our Bureau of Criminal Investigation right here within the Troop D area. We committed a significant number of resources in this case, which included the expertise and the support of our Special Investigations Unit, our Forensics Investigation Unit, and our Forensics Video Multimedia Unit. We expended a significant amount of resources and hours conducting extensive interviews, collecting evidence, and analyzing hundreds of pieces of evidence. We investigated more than 400 separate leads that were emanated from this case, and we executed 16 search warrants to date. These numbers, they illustrate the extraordinary efforts that our members dedicated to this case and our efforts in collecting basically information to get to the truth and providing answers to the family. I commend all of the members for their hard work. And I just want to close by offering my sincere condolence to the family of Robert Brooks. Now, I've been a member of law enforcement for a good number of years, and although I've personally overseen and investigated numerous criminal cases, I have to acknowledge that this was a horrific incident to view. And it was extremely difficult to watch and to comprehend. So I will clearly say here to the Brooks family and the community, I appreciate not only your strength and your composure, and essentially for having the trust in us that we would do what we could within our power to ensure that justice is served. Collectively, I thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent. As you might imagine, Commissioner of Docks, Dan Marticello, is a little busy at the moment, and he has graciously allowed one of his deputies, Darren Miller, to speak to you today representing Docks. Darren?
Thank you, Dean Fitzpatrick, and thank you everyone for being here. My name is Darren Miller, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner and Chief of the Office of Special Investigations for the Department of Corrections and Community Supervision. As Dean Fitzpatrick indicated, Commissioner Dan Marticello really wanted to be here today, but he's working hard to resolve an ongoing state of emergency across our state correctional facilities. I also want to start off by offering my sincere condolences to the family of Robert Brooks. What happened to Robert Brooks should never have happened, and is something that no family should have to endure. Today's indictments of the individuals responsible for the horrific killing of Robert Brooks marks an important step towards justice and healing. From the moment when we in OSI discovered the horrendous body-worn camera footage of these tragic events, Commissioner Marticello has said that individuals responsible for this reprehensible act must be held accountable, and that this atrocious behavior cannot be normalized in our state's prison system. Today's indictments show that nobody in the department is above the law. I want to thank Governor Hochul, DA Fitzpatrick, State Police Superintendent James for their leadership, and express our gratitude to all of the investigators and prosecutors who have worked tirelessly on this case to date. Commissioner Marticello and the entire department's leadership team understands that this is a moment that requires swift and transparent prison reform, not simply words of comfort and empty promises. This work has already begun in docks, with an emphasis on a system-wide change and changes that will improve transparency and accountability. This includes expansion of the body-worn and fixed camera systems across all of our facilities, improved training, and the expansion of our investigative, analytical, and medical capabilities. We are also undergoing an independent cultural review, and we are working closely with Governor Hochul and our unions to address the ongoing staffing crisis. This is a starting point to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. But the changes we're proposing require a long-term and transparent commitment. We in DOC stand steadfast to promote a culture that provides safety for all in our care, from the incarcerated to staff, and all are treated with dignity and respect. Everyone should have the opportunity to improve their lives, pursue second chances, and seek better outcomes for themselves and their families. This opportunity was denied to Robert Brooks by the individuals indicted today. This is an opportunity now for meaningful change arising from this tragic event. The department will continue to work closely with DA Fitzpatrick and his team of prosecutors and the state police to ensure that there are criminal convictions and justice. The governor and the department are committed to transparent and accountable reforms. We all must be better than this, and today's indictments are one positive step in that direction. Thank you.
Darren, thank you. Also present here, I just want to identify for the reporters, Steve Schwartz, who is the attorney for Robert's family, Jared Ricks, who is Robert's brother, Mazel, I don't want to butcher your last name, Mazel Shortinos, who's also Robert's son, and Robert Ricks, the father I spoke to earlier, I don't believe he's here, but speaking on behalf of his dad, is an outstanding young man that I'd like to ask to come up and say a few words to you, and that's Robert Brooks.
Hello, everyone. My name is Robert Brooks Jr. In December, I had to witness a brutal beating of murder by New York correctional officers. Earlier this month, I got news by the medical examiner. It was very painful, but unsurprised news that my father's death was due to homicide. After today, I witnessed over 10 New York correctional officers finally face crime charges. I will never get my father back. The men have robbed me of that opportunity. Still, indictments are an important step toward accountability. These men murdered my father. It was on video. The whole world got to see it. Waiting up for these charges have been extremely hard, but these men need to be prosecuted and convicted of the crimes they made. But even these convictions are not enough. Any person with authority who allows abuse and violence to go on for so long also needs to be held accountable. And I pledge, and my family pledges, to not stop until we see change into how our state prisons are operated, and that this no longer has to go on anymore, and no one has to face what me and my family have faced. My father's death will not be in vain. Justice for Robert Brooks. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. And several people have already said on behalf of every New Yorker, God bless you, and we're so very sorry about what happened. Yeah. I'll take questions. I'm going to take every question, so there's no reason to jump all over it. Just tell me what news agency you're from and to whom you'd like to direct the question, sir.
To you, I'm with the Associated Press. Could you speak a little bit about the redacted name, the person who's not in custody? Are they actively seeking to avoid arrest, or can you?
No, it's one individual. I'll charitably say it was a misunderstanding by his attorney. My recollection is that he was clearly told to be here, but he had a commitment that I'm not going to go into, and he is due to surrender himself next week. Obviously, if he doesn't surrender himself, he'll be arrested and hopefully remanded without bail.
And he's a CO?
He's a corrections officer.
So he'll be
Yeah.
coming in at a different time?
Yeah. Jared, we don't have a date, correct? 24th. So we'll notify the press if you want to be present for his break.
Thank you.
Andrew, I'm sorry.
I did have another question. I mean, we heard from the young man, Robert Brooks here, in regards to actually calling on higher powers to be also held accountable.
Sure.
What are your thoughts on that? I don't know if you have anyone specific in mind, but it sounds like people who are in charge of the correction officers involved.
Honestly, I think it's very gracious on Robert to speak in those terms. You notice when he talked about justice. He wasn't talking about vindictiveness or vengeance, but he's entitled to retribution, as is any crime victim survivor. There are the obvious disturbing things about the tape, the beatings, but there's a lot more disturbing about the tape, and to me the disturbing is the sense of normalcy, the way that everyone was just going about their business as if this was acceptable behavior, and I think that's what Robert is talking about, and it has to be done. I mean, my job, I'm focused. I intend to convict these defendants. That's my focus. Everything I've heard from the governor is that she's very acutely aware that there's a systemic problem that needs to be addressed, and it's not just Marcy. You see what's going on around the state, and the Inspector General, by the way, is also in the process of conducting an investigation. So,
Can I ask one more thing too?
sure.
There was a lot of noise inside both of the courtrooms and outside the courtroom from
Right.
supporters of Robert Brooks saying that they were very concerned that bail was set too low.
This is New York. If you get bail on a case, you should, after you do a novena, just say thank you, Your Honor, for setting bail. Bail is not an issue in this case. Case is not going to be decided because someone's locked up for 8 months or 9 months until the case comes to trial. These guys aren't going anywhere. So, Andrew?
I imagine the videotape is very valuable evidence to the case, but to think that it may not have existed because those officers didn't intentionally record their devices, it was by happenstance, wondering the value of the tape, but also the fact that they might have not been seen doing it if it didn't record.
There's no question that one of the ironic features of this case, and the grand jury found, the officers were not aware that they were being taped. That's going to be proven beyond a reasonable doubt at trial. So it begs the question, if the Axon didn't have that feature of recording the previous 30 minutes and saving that into the cloud or whatever they call it, would we be here today? Would Robert, in my judgment, would have gone to see Attorney Schwartz, and Attorney Schwartz would have said, well, I don't know what happened. They say that he fell outside and hit his head and was under the influence of some kind of narcotic, and he must have caused these injuries to himself. And, God only knows if we would have been able to, proceed with where we are today.
Can you speak to the logistics of getting the 10 people, or what is it, ever 9 it is today, in custody?
Well, that was done masterfully by the state police with the assistance of the Oneida County Sheriff's Office. Once the indictment was unsealed, the defendants prearranged locations with their attorneys surrendered. Those without attorneys surrendered anyway. And the state police at, I think, 4 or 5 various locations throughout upstate New York managed to get them here to court. Yes, in the back.
Hi, I'm with WKTV, the NBC affiliate here in Utica. I'm just wondering if plea negotiations would be entered into at any point?
A prosecutor has an ethical obligation to attempt to resolve a case before trial, and I'll certainly do that. But I'm not going to do that until I speak with Robert Brooks Jr. and the rest of his family. And if I do that, I certainly am not going to tell you, with all due respect, I don't discuss plea negotiations. It's not ethical to do that. Yes, straight ahead.
I'm with City of Central Transferring Live in Syracuse. Just wondering, when the presented members of the grand jury, what was their reaction if they sat and listened to the presentation and watched?
Unfortunately, I'm not allowed to discuss what happened in the grand jury. I can tell you without any revealing of confidential material, they were human beings. Their reaction, I suspect, was very similar to any person looking at that tape. It's difficult to watch. At the table here, sir. Yes.
Me?
Yep.
Hi, John Moss here from the Postal area in Syracuse. If Brooks didn't say anything to them, he didn't spit on them, he didn't do anything, why did they do this? Why did this happen?
Well, that's the ultimate question. We're going to have cooperating witnesses that will testify about that, John. I'm going to save that for trial. There's no valid explanation. Even if he did spit on them, even if he did say something offensive about them or their families, there's no justification for what they did. And in fact, it just, in my judgment, it just supports the finding of the grand jury that this was a depraved situation and warranted a murder charge. Yes, sir, right.
Hey, with New York Times. Thank you for your time.
Yep.
Is it clear why he was transferred from Mohawk in the first place?
He had been in an altercation at Mohawk on December the 7th and December the 9th, and DOC's officials made a judgment that for his safety, ironically enough, he should be transferred to Marcy. Neither of those assaults that took place on December the 7th or December the 9th, in the opinion of the medical examiner, contributed in any way to his death. Yes.
You were anything like this in your 30-plus years of prosecuting?
Say again.
You were appointed on this. Have you seen anything like this in your 30-plus years of prosecuting that's caught on video and just is brutal?
All right, last chance.
Okay.
I feel like I'm Trump. She looks wonderful, but I can't hear a word she said.
You were appointed to handle this case. Have
Right.
you ever seen anything like this before that was caught on tape as brutal as it is?
Have I ever seen anything? Well, I think the superintendent took the words out of my mouth when he said he'd never seen anything like it. My 2 assistants, Jared and Jed, they've watched the tape several dozen times. I've only seen it once, beginning to end, because every other time I started to watch it, I walked out of the room. So I guess the simple answer is no. All right, ladies. Yes.
Sorry, from 13 Revenues in Rochester.
Hi.
Just to make sure I'm being accurate, the defendants today, how many of them made bond in bail? Just so I'm being accurate.
I don't know the answer to that. I apologize. At least 6 of them made bond in court, and I don't know about the rest. check online. Right here at the end of the table and then all the way back.
Hey, Prosecutor Patrick, J.B. Nicholas, Freelance News. You've been a law enforcement officer your entire life. You send people to prison every day. How are you feeling right now in the fact that you're putting, COs behind bars at this point in your career?
Okay, a little premature to say I'm putting anybody behind bars, but you can ask me that, 8 months from now after the verdict, and I'll tell you. I'm not putting anybody behind bars. They put themselves behind bars if they're convicted.
How about this? Did you, as investigating law enforcement, did you face any special obstacles or any challenges that you don't usually face in investigations?
No. It's a fair question. Were there any obstacles, any pressure, any type of... I've got pressure put on me by one person in this case. And it's that young man sitting right there. When I met him a couple of weeks ago, and I shook his hand, and I said, Robert, I'm going to try to get justice for your father. And he looked at me, and he said, I certainly hope so. I pray that you do your best. That's pressure. That's the only pressure that's been put on me in this case. And the obstacles are non-existent because of these men and women of the state police and the DOCS investigators that have assisted me. All the way in the back.
Hi, Jessica Julian with News Channel 13 in Albany. I spoke with Robert Brooks' father and then also with the family friend. They both tell me while they're happy that the corrections officers and other guards are being charged in this case, they're upset and wonder why they got bail.
I don't know. You probably could have, you're a reporter, you probably could have answered that for them. We live in the state of New York where it's very rare to see somebody charged and not have bail set. I thought that the bail set by Judge Bauer was eminently reasonable. I don't consider them flight risks. If this was 2019, I probably would have asked for remand because it's a murder charge. But if Judge Bauer had done that, I think he would have been immediately overturned by a higher court. So I understand their frustration, but be patient. Let's see what happens. Sir.
Yeah. Was there any investigation into this being more than an isolated incident of prison guard brutality, but as actually a part of a beatdown squad?
Yes, sir.
Thing that exists in correctional facilities across the state, where it's investigated as more than just an isolated incident?
My staff and I and the state police did look into that possibility in connection with this. We did not find that, otherwise we would have returned indictments reflecting that. Does it exist? I can't answer that. I can tell you that to paint a broad brush of the thousands of corrections officers in the state based on these guys would be unjust. But there's a problem. When people are milling around, watching a guy being beaten, being dragged around like a piece of meat, and doing nothing other than filling out paperwork, there's a problem that needs to be addressed, and I think the appropriate people are addressing that. But to answer your question directly, no, we did not find evidence that this was something normal that would happen at Marcy.
Some of these officers, though, are accused with other acts of violence in their job through civil lawsuits.
That's why the Attorney General recused herself. Does anybody have any questions for anyone behind me? I don't want to keep everybody. I know the superintendent has other things to address. So.
With the prison, I know you're representing the prison, correct? I don't know if you want to come up to the microphone. There is a call from the family and those who support the family for systemic, long-term, drastic change. And you addressed that a little bit, but what can you say you're actively working to do?
There currently is an independent law firm that has been hired and is conducting an extensive review of the culture in the correctional system. They're touring various prisons. They're talking to individuals on the highest ranks, including our commissioner, all of the executive staff in the department, and then on down, so that it's a top-to-bottom review of the Department of Corrections. We are also engaging 2 other entities again, independent entities that have expertise in corrections, and they're looking at different sampling of correctional facilities with also the mindset of trying to drill down to see what types of changes can be made to implement real and sustained reform in our system.
How is the...
And that's just among others. I mean, I mentioned about the body-worn cameras, which is a game changer in the system, particularly trying to determine what goes on behind the walls. The video in this case was obviously very instrumental in identifying what happened. We were working this case right from the start with the state police and then the attorney general. And when we got word from the medical examiner about the serious and gruesome injuries sustained by Robert Brooks, there were significant questions that were being asked as far as how could that have happened. The video answered that question, and I was there when we reviewed that video on December 12th, after one of our investigators, actually my second in charge, Chris Marcello, who Dave Fitzpatrick mentioned, and on a thought that we should check with the company to see could there be retained video. And we pursued that lead, and to our shock, we found that video, and thank God that we did.
Some of these issues are actually coming up by correction officers in the Wildcat strikes, including the body-worn camera footage. Should that body-worn cameras, should there be more of them? Should there not be body-worn camera footage? So how are the demands from correction officers from the Wildcat strikes actually, how is that affecting any of your plans to make changes?
Well, as you might imagine, we're in the middle of that emergency and that crisis, and those demands are being reviewed by the commissioner and the governor, and they're working with the unions. But I know the commissioner and the governor stand firm in believing in the importance of transparency and camera footage in order to hold people accountable for their actions. And that includes anybody in the system.
And who was that said you should check with the company to see if they had the backup footage?
My number two in the office, Chris Marcello, had the thought that perhaps there was recall video, which is what it's referred to. We had not known about recall video previously, and it was, quite frankly, an alert. But we pursued that because we knew it was important to pursue all leads to try to find out what happened and pursue the facts and gather the facts. And as soon as we found that video, I was on the phone to the state police and the attorney general's office that night, telling them about the video, and we immediately transferred it over.
And how long did it take once you asked for the video to realize that the video existed? Like what gap was there? Like how long did that take?
It was the day we
Within hours.
Within hours.
How much did you know before you checked for the video? Like, was there a serious complaint from someone? Obviously, you had an inmate who didn't survive, but was there a serious complaint from anyone who witnessed this that said you got to look into this?
We investigate, along with the state police and the attorney general, every death in custody. So we had an ongoing investigation. The medical examiner's preliminary report strongly suggested there was foul play.
What was the expectation for body-worn cameras at that moment? Should they have all been turned on?
Correct.
Why didn't body cameras capture the first two beatings?
Because the technology is such that it only went back 30 minutes. So the first you see Robert is 30 minutes before some corrections officers turned on their body-worn cameras and were attempting CPR on him. Does that make sense?
Right, when he's outside, that's 30 minutes before
he's dead.
activated the cameras.
Yes.
And how do we know about the first two beatings that weren't captured on videotape?
We know because of witnesses that have been cooperative with the special prosecutor.
And I'm sorry, can I just follow up with one more question? One of the issues that people have highlighted that has contributed to guard violence is disciplinary system that Docs has for employees, groundly criticized as ineffective. Will you be supporting, will the Department of Corrections be supporting reforms such as making those hearings available to the public?
Are you referring to the disciplinary hearings?
Yes.
I know the department is committed to transparency. We obviously would follow the law, and I know that there is currently consideration of legislative changes, and I can't comment on potential legislative change. I think Commissioner Marticello has also spoken about this during the budget hearings, so I would refer you to his testimony before the state legislature 2 weeks ago.
And did the department receive any warnings about these guards beforehand or anything like that? Like, did the department discipline any of these guards for assault before this incident?
Off the top of my head, I can't answer your question. Sorry.
Okay, last question.
Mr. Fitzpatrick, how common is it to transfer inmates like Mr. Brooks following altercations at Mohawk, and who was in charge of that decision?
I don't have the expertise to answer that question. I know it was done for his safety. He didn't desire protective custody. Robert did not desire protective custody, but I can't tell you how often that happens.
Can you talk about the incidents themselves, you know, what they were, how they started, what his injuries were arriving at Marcy?
No, it was inmate fights. I'm not going to go into any further details.
Real quick,
but emphasizing they did not contribute to his death.
the plea agreements you did talk about being active, are those 3 people we saw today or 3 people we did not see today?
You did not see these 3 people today. You'll become aware of them later on.
And did they involve jail time?
Again, all their plea arrangements will be in open court on the record.
Just
Yep.
real quick, are you able to talk about these 2 previous beatings, just sort of what happened?
Am I able to talk about them?
Yeah.
Not at this press conference. All right, seriously, last 2 questions, all the way back and then over here, and that's it.
I noticed in the body cam, the officers who were most hands-on in the beating of Robert Brooks were wearing their American flags on their uniform in an inverted fashion. And I want to know if any investigation was done into whether or not those particular guards who were wearing their uniform in a particular way are part of some white supremacist terrorist group that currently operates within the New York State Department of Corrections.
Grand jury found 0 evidence of that, and I certainly would have
But
announced
was
it.
there questions into why they wore their flags on their uniform in a different way than all the other officers in the facility?
Well, some of the defendants were questioned extensively. I don't know if that question was raised specifically, but again, there's no evidence that this was a crime of racial animus. There's no indication, there's no audio on the tapes, but there's no indication that racial slurs were used, and in terms of inverted American flags, that's not part of my case. Last question over here.
Yeah, my math, Sean Mills, Daily Sentinel in Rome. My math might not be correct, but initially after this, Governor Hochul ordered a total of, I believe, 18 or so employees to be terminated from docks, but I don't think there's an 18 names or mentions of charges here. Are there some people from the scene that were found not to be culpable?
Well, as I indicated, there are 3 unidentified people that have already reached plea agreements with me, and there are at least 3 other individuals that are still under investigation. So it's the governor's decision to fire people over here, my decision, grand jury's decision to charge people with crimes and to convict them beyond a reasonable doubt.
Are they all
Thank you all.
Are they all terminated by now? Mr. Miller might be able to answer this.
I believe they're all terminated.
The pending termination, some have resigned.
But
We're going through the arbitration process as a matter of the collective bargaining agreement.
So not all of them, only Mr. Farina is actually gone, but the others are going through the process of termination?
I believe there are maybe 2 that have resigned. I'm going off the top of my head, so.
But they're going through the
qualify
process
that,
of
but they're going
termination.
through the process by which we are bound to pursue.
And that's
under the
ongoing
collective bargaining agreement.
as of today. The people arraigned today are going through that process as we speak.
Those that have not been terminated are suspended and they're facing termination. That's what the department's position is. They're moving to terminate them. but we have to go through the collective
The
bargaining.
men being arraigned today are
process.
suspended as you go through the termination.
Correct, suspended without pay.
Thank you.
Thank
Will
you.
the officers who have retired maintain their benefits and pensions?